This was a baseless, bad faith political raid on the home of the former president, President Trump. The Constitution is in crisis. Our republic is in crisis because of the Biden administration's reckless, abusive, and political raid on the home of President Trump. I want to talk to you about that at some length today and directly. I was unable to talk to you about it directly last week because I was on vacation, or at least I was trying to be on vacation, but the outrageous Biden corruption thwarted that to some extent. But I'm glad to be back here with you today because there's so much going on and so much background that I want to share with you. I can't talk fast enough to get it out. So I want you to keep track and understand, in the end, this was a baseless, bad faith political raid on the home of the former president, President Trump. The former candidate for office, the prior president, obviously, who would run against Biden and who is likely to be his challenger in 2024. It has no precedent in American history, and as I will explain, the whole basis for it was fraud. And we should be outraged about it. We should be concerned that the FBI and the DOJ have been, we've been always concerned about this, but they for sure have been hijacked for political purposes to target the political opponents of President Biden, the Democrats, and the left generally. And when you have federal law enforcement being used in this way to not to advance the interests of the public, not to advance rule of law, not to fairly administer justice, but to target the political opponents of the current administration, that way lies the death of the republic. So these are serious times for our system of government, and the big media would have you believe, oh, the president had classified records, the president had presidential records, oh, it must have been really serious for them to raid it. No, none of that is likely true, as I will explain, and virtually anything that even if it were all true, there was nothing warranting the raid, the dangerous raid on President Trump's home. Now, Judicial Watch has been now for almost 30 years the #1 litigator, I would submit, on records issues. And you're going to hear some phrases thrown out by me today related to laws, and I'll give you a quick glossary. There are several laws related to the handling of government records and access to them. Obviously, there's the Freedom of Information Act, which gives American citizens and others access to information about what the government's up to, certainly at the executive branch level, meaning the agencies of the president are subject to FOIA. And then there's another law called the Federal Records Act, which is a kind of a more narrow law that relates to the responsibilities of federal agencies to create records and maintain records about the activities of the agency. So it goes beyond, it makes it clear that when the government's making decisions, they document them. And then the other law that is of interest to us today is the Presidential Records Act. It's a law that purports to govern the handling and classification of records that the President of the United States uses in the White House. And under the law, he can designate certain records as presidential records and certain records as personal records. I want to say that again. Under the law, the president and the president alone can designate certain records as presidential records to be saved for historical purposes, to be managed and ultimately released potentially by the National Archives, or he can designate personal records. And I don't presumably need to tell you what a personal record means. Practically speaking, it means there are records that he gets to keep and take with him after the presidency. And that's the rub with the sham investigation and targeting and abuse of President Trump. They're pretending the records he had were were presidential and or classified. And I would contend, because the position of the Justice Department has previously been, that records the president has after the presidency presumptively are personal, presumptively are not classified, presumptively are not governed by the Presidential Records Act, presumptively are not subject to confiscation by the National Archives or any of its agents, namely the Justice Department or the FBI. But they changed the rules, they've changed the law, and I suspect they pulled a fast one even on the court down there in Florida in suggesting all of this was at issue to justify a raid on his home, when in fact they had no good faith basis to do so. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.